Hey, fucking Facebook and its fucking weirdness. Happy Tuesday. See, it just restarted. So I was probably live already, but who knows? Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Tuesday Tales. Let me find this post. Why is the group missing? There we go. Let me just find the post. Make sure you can hear me. Yep. Okay. And let's get into it, guys. Let's get into it. So your horse is being a murderous asshole. What's that about? What is that really about? So often, people come to me and they are. There's two ways this goes. People come to me and they don't realize how bad of shape their horse is in. And they're like, I just really want to do the best for them. And we want to compete really well. And we've been doing well, but I think we could do better. And they deserve to be cared for. Absolutely. 100%. Hallelujah. And then there's the other side of the coin. There's the side of the coin where they're like, listen, I don't know what the fuck's going on, but I know something is wrong. And what I keep being told is my horse is just being a jerk. I just need to train it out of them. They just need to learn a few lessons. Just give them a good kick every now and then. Or, I need to carry a crop, or I need to put spurs on them, or what the fuck ever. Y'all, those are not the answers. Those are not it. If your horse is being a murderous asshole, or they're just being a jerk, or they just need a come into Jesus moment, no, that's not accurate. Okay, we get to start shifting this mindset because this is a long time mindset. And it's interesting because I talked to a lot of people, obviously, and we were there. I was trying to sell my horse Cash, and so I'm kind of like talking to a lot of people because it's an interview process. It's not just who can show up with the first amount of money. I want to make sure that where he's going to get the care he needs. So we're having these conversations. I want to know what they plan on using him for, what they do now. And this isn't like, I'm not like asking all of these questions of this person. I'm making sure it comes up in normal conversation, right? Tell me about where your farm is. What do you do now? What are you looking for him for, right? Just very open, honest, easy conversation. And in several of them, we've come around to the training mentality of, they should have come to Jesus moment, they're just misbehaving, all these things. And with Cash in particular, he is not going to accept that. Like, that is not going to work for him. He will protect himself, as he should. Sorry, guys. You might be asking for that asshole behavior yourself because you're not listening. And when you're not listening, their behavior becomes louder and louder, more and more explosive, okay? So, sometimes we call this the cowboy mentality. And the thing is I just don't believe that. I think that's modern half-ass cowboy mentality. I think that the cowboys that are out there that truly depend on their horse and truly spend hours and hours and hours on end in the saddle, of course, they are going to listen to their horse because they're going to know what the signals are. They're going to know so much about their horse, and they're going to listen because they value their horse for more than just the work they provide, but very much more than you or I value the work they provide, because literally the whole farm, the whole ranch operation is going to depend on these horses being able to do their jobs. So they listen a little bit better. So we could all take a lesson from actual cowboys, not this half-assed cowboy who's like, I just need a half-assed solution. I just need a solution right now. Okay? The solution right now is not going to last. And when it no longer works, is going to be the least opportune moment, right? We're either going to break the horse down and they're going to have a major injury. And obviously there's no good time for that. But it's probably going to come right before the championship, right before you could win all the money, right? Or, they're going to have a explosion, a behavioral breakdown in the least opportune moment that puts more people in danger, that costs potentially the ranch, if we were looking at it from that perspective, way more money, because it could jeopardize the lives of people and animals and lose a herd, right? So we really want to pay attention to what the fuck our horses are telling us instead of just being like, stop being an asshole. And that is entitled behavior. If you have not listened to last week's podcast episode. I highly recommend you go over there and check it out. Hope for the Hopeless Horse on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that was all about entitlement. And we by shutting down what our horses are telling us, are actually being very entitled little bitches. Okay. Your horse doesn't owe you anything. You are lucky to have the relationship with them. So how do we know? How do we know when our horse is being an asshole versus when they maybe have a training problem, right? Maybe there's a gap in their training. And this is a legit thing. Like, obviously, our horses can misbehave for any number of reasons, but all of those misbehavings, all of the bad behavior, the less preferred behaviors are communications. Sit. Have a sit. Good boy. If I have to listen to the clickety-clacking, okay, I need to out. Everybody out. You guys are distracting. Nice try. Anyway, I just focus so much better without the clickety-clacks. So, it all comes down to listening to your horse, okay? So when they start to show the sign of bad behavior, instead of getting frustrated or, just kind of ignoring that behavior and just asking again or whatever, we can get curious. We can get curious about why they chose to behave that way. And in that curiosity, really start to inspect what that behavior that they just gave you that was not ideal was protecting. Okay? So in some cases, like, people get upset because their horses kind of like, they go too wide around the barrel, right? Like, or they avoid the barrel. They like kind of do this. Like, okay. So, or jump. They might do the same thing. They might come up to the jump and then be like, dee! Like they haven't stopped, but they're doing the whole, like, which way am I going to go? Sometimes they go over, sometimes they don't, right? And in that moment, we can be upset that they're trying to get out of work, that they're trying to avoid the jump or avoid the barrel. Or we can be like, but why? Why are they doing that? What is going on there? Now, obviously, there's times where we've all been through this and we were like, oh, I'm the asshole. You were trying to avoid fill in the blank, right? You were trying to avoid the snake that I didn't see. You were trying to avoid, XYZ that I didn't see, that I wasn't aware of, that I didn't perceive in that situation. So, at first we're like, what the hell? And then we're like, oh, just kidding. That was my fault, right? So what if instead of going straight to what the hell, we start programming ourselves, and this will be a programming thing. You have to program it. You have to program out this whole what the hell response, okay, and go straight into why did we do that? We have to start to program that curiosity of why did that happen? Because in some instances, when it's a training situation, your horse is just confused. And they will send it, every horse is going to be a little bit different, which is always what makes these conversations a little bit complicated for me, because I can't just be like, well, if they do this, this, or this, it's not pain. But if they do this, this, and this, it is pain. That's not always how it is. And, the key here is that when it is training, there's confusion. And you can usually reflect in your own process, like, how did we get here? What have we trained up to this point? Did you cut corners? Was there a point where at step 1, they did really well, at step 2, they did well, at step 3, they did okay, but not great, but you pushed to step 4 anyways, and step 4 was okay, definitely not great, step 5 was no, we didn't get it at all, and then you're out here trying to put all 6 steps together, but you were floundering at step 4, right? We usually are aware. We usually know. We're usually the problem, okay? So that can definitely be a training thing. But then when we're looking at, like, going back to that example of like the barrel or a jump where they're like, or maybe they go ahead and just completely refuse and go around, or they go wide, or whatever it is that they're doing that is not ideal. When they're doing that, why are they doing it? And it's, especially in these cases, it's like, well, the training's not hard. You're directing every step of the way. They may be insecure about going over a fence if it looks different or new, or maybe the barrel looks different, or you're in a new arena and there's different stuff near the barrel. Sure. we can give a little bit of awareness and sensitivity to the fact that the surroundings are different and making them a little uncomfortable. But really, if this is a repeated problem in multiple different situations, or even if it's brand new, especially if it's brand new out of nowhere, and you're like, they don't do this, and they've already mastered this type of jump, and they've already run barrels a bajillion times, it's probably pain. It's probably pain. Because when you think about what is required in either of those, these are great examples, because in a barrel, they've got to be able to maneuver and bend their body and really get their legs up underneath them. And if they are not feeling 100% balance or aware of where their feet are, or if they have pain anywhere, that type of real tough collection movement is going to exacerbate it. That's a lot of spinal movement and flexion in both ways, okay? And that is going to potentially trigger something that might not bother them while they're walking or trotting a straight line or even on a big circle. But when you put it on that small barrel circle, they're like, oh, fuck no. Pain, okay? And in the case of the jump, you're literally expecting them to leap over something, all fucking 1,000 pounds of them, and come down on 2 feet. If there's pain, and it might be pain in either set of feet, right? They're landing on their front feet. So obviously, if they're like, I don't want to take off, it very well could be that they don't want to land on the other side. But also, what about their hocks and their stifles in that launch? What about their glutes and their SI joint in that launch, right? We get to start being more conscientious of what the fuck they're going through and all of the demands that we put on them and what their communication looks like. Have you truly spent enough time with your horse to know what it looks like when they're confused versus when they're in pain? And for fuck's sake, there's no such thing as ruling out pain. You can't do it. You can't rule it out. You cannot. It is impossible. If your vet says we've completely ruled out pain, fuck, you have. Did you ask my horse if he feels pain anywhere? No, you didn't. You can't. It's not possible. So we can know that the pain maybe isn't the root of the problem, or that the horse isn't experiencing pain in places that we normally ask about, but we cannot absolutely rule out pain. The other thing I'd like to draw your attention to is that in the human body, as humans, we only ever experience 10% of the actual pain that our body is in, because our nervous system is intelligent, okay? It knows that if we actually experienced more than the 10%, we would shut down, right? That's why people go into shock when they're in extreme amounts of pain, because their brain cannot process it, cannot handle it. We have so many sensitive nerve endings that we can only handle 10%. So with that in mind, just because your horse is expressing a very limited amount of pain doesn't mean that that's truly the amount of pain that they're experiencing or that is present in their body, because they're the same way, and more so in some ways, because we aren't hypervigilant and aware that if we have a weakness, we can be eaten by a predator at any given moment, okay? And that's your horse's instinct, is to cover up that pain pattern, because the weakest link is the problem, right? You remember that show? You are the weakest link. Goodbye. To your horse, it's, I am the weakest link. I will die. Okay? So we need to be very conscious of that, and that knowing that they are trying to hide their pain all the time and trying to push forward through it, because that is what will keep them safe. And then let's tie this back to as well the mirror that provides in us, because we do the same thing. We hide our emotional pains, we stuff them down so that we can stay functional in this society, and your horse is doing the same thing. They're taking their physical pains and sometimes their emotional distress and stuffing it down in order to survive. Have you ever seen a horse shut down? Because when they are shut down, they are just doing what they need to survive. All of their confusion, all of their pain, all of their distress is just stuffed down, and they just shut down. What does it take to survive? And I see that way too often. And even in horses that are in a loving home, that are in a loving situation, they weren't necessarily always in that situation. And so there are horses out there that don't understand what it means to have innate value. And I feel like this is where a lot of people start to resonate, and they're like, oh, my horse has worthiness issues too? Yes. Your horse believes to some extent that they have to perform XYZ in order to be loved in order to continue to survive, because that's the way their life has been forever. And then come out of that, right? It's all about situation and individual horses. All right, so what it comes down to is really there's no way to rule out pain, and there's no way to say for sure that it's not a training issue. I mean, sometimes it's more obvious to someone like me who has, like, I'm going to take a history. I'm going to look at all the facts. I'm going to gather as much information. You can do this too. Gather as much information as possible and look at everything, and like their lifestyle, look at their workload, look at what their nutrition is like. Do they have friends? What's their history? Do they know what we're asking them to do, or have they never done it before? Is this a relatively new introduction or not, right? And then, like, it's pretty simple. Go back to basics, and then you rule out training. You can rule out a training problem. You cannot rule out a pain problem. So if you go back to the basics of training and your horse is just not cooperating and seems sour and doesn't want to be there, there's probably a pain problem under that. Now, inside of the Intuitive Equine Bodywork Certification Program, we go over in intuitive assessment strategies, which include hands-on evaluations, which are going to be muscular and skeletal, as well as energetic evaluations, to be able to really assess what's going on. But what it comes down to in the whole package, what we're learning about assessments, is taking everything, the things that I just talked about, all that history, and what we're looking at, what we can feel with our hands, what we can see, visual assessments as well, gait analysis and postural analysis with still photos or the horse standing in front of us, and really being able to narrow down where a potential problem could be, because it's all right there. Not only do you have a conscious and sentient being in front of you that is trying to communicate continually what they're going through, whether they mean to or not, right? Just like us with body language speaks, your posture speaks. We can read the story of the horse from their body. And that is what we teach in Intuitive Equine Bodywork Certification. It is crucial to be able to narrow down what's actually going on. And so I worked with a horse named Dusty, who was really cute. And when I started working with him, I was told that he's usually just a really good pack horse, right? They were kind of like a trail company. It wasn't for the public, but they did a bunch of guided tours. Anyway, so he was just a trail horse, but they did arena work with him. Their goal was always to keep their horses fully functional. So they did arena work, they did groundwork. They were great people. They did amazing things. And for as long as they'd owned Dusty, he had just been a good pack horse. He just did what he was told. He was just a good boy, but he was very mellow, didn't really have much of a personality, didn't seek people out. He just did what he was told. They'd get him out of the pasture, they'd saddle him up, he did his work, he went back out to the pasture. And when I met him, he really didn't engage with me at our introduction, which is whatever, it's fine, but it's a little strange. They usually at least reach out. He didn't do that. And I was told that he had started to get cranky and refused to go on trails and was not maintaining canter leads. All these things were not Dusty-like. He was a good boy, and this is not good boy behavior. And so I started doing a massage, and in that massage, he did not respond to me. Much like the introduction, he didn't look at me. He didn't turn his face to me. He didn't have any releases. He didn't respond when I touched things and was like, oh, that probably hurt. He was like, nothing. Glazed over, didn't move, nothing. And at that point, I knew. I could feel what was going on in his body, that he was in a lot of pain, and that he just hadn't told anybody about it. And he'd gotten to the point where he couldn't contain it anymore. He couldn't repress any more discomfort. And these people did not have him forever, okay? They bought him, who knows how many times he'd been shuffled around, who knew what his past experience had been, but for them, he had just been an all-around good boy. So for all we know, he had abusive history or a home where he just wasn't seen, where people just didn't go to cuddle him, they didn't want to engage with him. He just needed to do his job. So in that second massage, I was like, okay, I got to try something new. I got to try something different because I've got to get through to this horse. And so I pulled out my red light. And I was really skeptical about red lights, and this horse made me realize they make a hell of a difference. I just clicked it on when I got to a spot that felt really tight, when I got to a spot that felt like it needed some help to release. I just clicked on my red light and stood there. That light clicked on, and within five seconds, his head just turned and looked at me. And it was right then, like licking and chewing. He started yawning, and I was like, whoa, like we just cracked him open. We did it, right? Like, but also, whoa, this red light is amazing. um, and that's what it took. That's what it took to break in to him and for him to realize that I'm not going away. I do have a care and concern for how you're thinking and feeling, and I want to work with you, not on you, not put you to work with you. And he did beautifully. You know, that second massage, he really opened up. And after the third, which I do 3 massages in 2 weeks, in that third, after that third massage, he was not just back to normal Dusty. He was calling out when people were walking out to the pasture. When I came back to do the third massage, the people were just like blown away. They're like, Dusty has a personality. He wants to see us now. He reaches out and engages. He is so playful. He was carrying so much pain, and no one saw it. He wasn't being naughty. It wasn't a training issue, which with him was obvious because he'd been doing this work for a couple years with them and it had been great, right? They're always communicating, even if that communication is silence. They're always talking. So get out there, do some fun pony shit, and I will see you next Tuesday.